My name is Joe Jordan. I'm the Chief Strategy Officer for Moran Security Solutions and Midco Systems. We're excited to have you a part of this educational seminar this morning. Our company itself, we are a large system security and technology provider. We focus on helping our clients protect their people, places, and profits. We do that in many different forms, but the purpose of today's call is really just about sharing value and sharing information. For the sake of time, we'll not be able to field any questions on this call. However, I personally will be sending you an email at the end of the call with my contact information, so you can reach directly out to me if you have any specific questions that I may be able to answer for you. We want to be able to assist however we may be able to do that. We will be recording this webinar, and it can be made available by request. We do expect this meeting to last right at 30 minutes, and our teammates here on the call will be able to do that promptly. They've had similar webinars over time that they've been pretty prompt on their delivery. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to our team here, turn it over to our partner Tetra VX, and introduce you to Michael Cass and Matt Feely, who will be conducting today's webinar. Gentlemen.
No, thank you. This is Matthew. I'll jump in and to just kind of echo some of Joe's statements. Obviously, appreciate your time today, and we look forward to kind of sharing a little bit of information today around kind of desktop as a service. You know, not surprising. You know, we've just had a tremendous amount of uptick in interest and questions around, you know, various kind of work from home solutions, but desktop as a service has definitely been one of the topics that has typically been one of the first conversations we have. And again, a lot of it has to do with just the security implications of everyone having to, you know, basically overnight convert from a work from home. So today, again, it's gonna be a pretty quick action-packed session. We're gonna cover a little bit of background on what desktop as a service is, just because again, we're not completely aware of everyone's familiarity with the technology. Focus a little bit of time on why, right? Why do people look to this technology? Why do people deploy this technology? You know, big fan of kind of storytelling, and so I think sometimes telling a couple stories of companies that have implemented this technology and how they did it and why they did it. So we'll share a couple of those with you, and then give you a couple of takeaways in terms of, you know, if it looks like this technology is appropriate and there's some potential there, you know, how we typically recommend companies begin to move down that path. So quick introductions. Again, this is Matthew Feely. I'm a partner and director here at Netrix. Been with the firm for many years, focusing on the product development side, which these technologies fall under. With me is Mike. I will let Mike introduce himself.
Great. Hi, folks. Michael Cass, partner and director with Netrix as well. Been here a couple decades, consulting, integrating, and creating managed service technology products. Thank you.
Okay, so how do we jump in? Mike, why don't we flip, and I'll hand this to you in a second. And I think we just wanted to kind of, again, we weren't quite sure exactly, you know, everyone's familiarity with kind of desktop as a service. So we wanted to kind of anchor to some core terminology, and just kind of speak a little bit to, you know, the experience an end user has with desktop as a service, and then also kind of the experience that an organization has with desktop as a service if they implement it. So with this, I will hand it over to Mike to take you through some of these points.
Great. Thank you, Matt. And once again, folks, thanks for joining. I've seen some other folks come in a couple minutes into the top of the hour here. Just to reiterate, the session is being recorded, so it'll be packaged back up for you know, so you can listen from start to end, or if you need to, you know, step away for just a moment, no problems there. We are going to there's going to be a Q&A sent out after this, because we are on a fixed 30-minute schedule. We'll fill up this 30 minutes with content. Last point, just to reference the difference, or we reference Tetra VX as a partner of FE Moran and Midco. The Tetra is a product and a division of Netrix around unified communications, voice-related services. You'll see Netrix as a business name and logo here, and that is a brand and the parent company name, which covers a number of other technology services. Today, we're going to focus on virtual desktop as a service. This is a cloud technology of ours. I'll go into details about what is virtual desktop, what is desktop as a service, and then we'll talk about practical applications of this, why businesses are using this technology, why it's very prevalent, kind of one of the hottest things in the market right now to help businesses, and then how is it used just in general, normal normal operating states. So that said, common terminology, as we said, virtual desktop infrastructure, or VDI. These technologies have been around for many years. One of the most common brands, well-known brands in the market, is Citrix. So Citrix has been providing virtual applications or published apps inside of environments. Very popular in healthcare, has been used in the enterprise, middle-sized to larger enterprises for many years. And now there's a couple other technologies that have become common. Microsoft and their Azure platform has gotten into the mix with Windows Virtual Desktop. There's technologies from VMware, and then several other players that are on the market. And so that's helping to understand what we're talking about here. We're talking about providing a virtual working experience for a user, a secure environment, a secure desktop, if you will, or published application that resides in the cloud, resides at the data center, close to the point where the data that it's accessing, or the application or database that it's accessing, resides, for performance, for stability, integrity of the data. Now, the next major term and concept here is desktop as a service. So what do we mean by this? Well, we need the point of providing a virtual desktop is to really enable employees and enable users, enable the business users, be they direct employees and or outside contractors, whomever, but enable them to get secure access to corporate digital assets, files, once again, data applications, allow them to do so in a secure, consistent manner wherever they may be they in the office, traveling, and or the norm today is working from home, right? Now, desktop as a service is commonly used to refer to what a service provider, a managed service provider, will create and distribute. So where this fits often is for businesses that don't have the resources, be the capital or even normal financial means, to implement a dedicated system for themselves, right? So as a service is that aids businesses get access to this technology, similar to how cloud does, similar to how Azure and AWS or private regional cloud providers allow businesses to get access to pay as you go, pay as you grow type consumption without the large investment in the compute, the storage infrastructure, the network, and security. So to just talk briefly about how I'm using this, or how we use this technology. Frankly, I'm using my virtual desktop today. I'm presenting through it. I'm connected to it. It really doesn't matter what type of device I'm using. In fact, a little redundancy at the home office. I have two laptops around. Use one primarily. If one happens to have an issue, I simply re-log into my virtual desktop. Here we have an example up displayed on this slide on the iPad and the smartphone. The point there is to demonstrate that there's a seamless, consistent experience across multiple devices. So, how do I connect? One method, and the method I use commonly, is open a web browser. I go to netrix.cloud.com. In this example, it's part of our Citrix-enabled technology. So our primary DaaS platform is based around Citrix technology. So I hit a web browser. I get access to an authentication box like shown on the screen. I get it is secure. It's an added layer of security. It's got a token-based system that sends a notification to my phone. I open up an app and put in a challenge code that changes every 30 seconds. So many of you on the call are familiar with these type of technologies. Maybe it's how you authenticate to Microsoft Office today if you have multi-factor authentication enabled. Or maybe you've had something similar in accessing a financial institution, bank, or what have you, where you get additional challenge. This is secure. I'm certain that I'm the only one accessing my virtual desktop, and I can do it from any device seamlessly. From the perspective of why would I want to use this, or what are some of the key benefits of implementing this for my business? Very simplified onboarding and offboarding procedures for users, enabling bring your own device type scenarios where maybe a business is certainly in the current climate, business is not as eager to go out and procure a number of laptops or desktops or devices to ship out to home users. Provided someone has any basic means of accessing the internet and a basic machine, they can get access to this virtual desktop, and the business, can easily enable and disable access to those digital assets quite simply. Aids into the ongoing management there, as stated. So, hope that was helpful. The point, I spent a lot of time on that slide just to help make sure we had the construct of what this is and why we use it. A few key points here. Security. Traditionally, but before work from home, before this was so wildly popular in helping customers get their remote users access to business resources, security was one of the main focuses here. Enabling businesses to implement a strong data loss prevention posture, right? Some businesses are needing to be in compliance with GRC governance controls. Well, some of these state that you need to ensure and have accountability for where digital assets are accessed from. And concern can come into play where if you're just giving people a VPN client to their home or to their own personal device, a lot of other technologies are need to be brought into the fold to ensure the security and compliance of that remote endpoint. Well, if we centralize that virtual desktop experience and provide that through a desktop as a service platform in the cloud, we check off a number of those boxes when it comes to security and compliance. The other components here, flexibility and scalability. That goes back to quick, easy onboarding, offboarding of user resources, paying for what you use, flexibility in the construct of the contracts and agreements for these solutions often have a small base monthly related service fee and then vary based on number of users. Scalability, well, you don't have the restriction around needing additional assets, needing additional physical space if you were to deploy in a traditional premises-based server infrastructure. The point is, these resources are in a data center. They're in a cloud platform. In our case, these are data centers that Netrix owns and operates, as well as our technologies connect directly in with Azure and AWS. So that also tells part of the flexibility story, is that even as an MSP service provider, as Netrix providing our DaaS platform, we aren't even limited just to the primary data centers that we use. We made certain that we bring a product to market that has flexibility to be used across multiple clouds. I'm going to move on here. Start to talk about some the customer stories. Oh, sorry about that. So here's a quadrant here that we use to talk about the types of businesses and stories around their adoption. We're going to talk about 3 different scenarios. The key here is to understand that while we look horizontally at, as we define the business size from small business to an enterprise business, we want to show that these technologies are used equally across a myriad of different types of industries. I think I got muted there for just a moment. Sorry about that. All right, so let me state that again. We're go through a couple different scenarios here, different businesses, different sizes and shapes, and also part of the story is, where was the business today already when in terms of their current technology footprint? Were they operating on legacy technology, or were they already leading edge and maybe needed a little bit of additional assistance with getting a virtual desktop environment deployed? So first one to talk about here is a law firm. So law firm, about 250 users. The story here was that they had aging on-premises infrastructure. This infrastructure was your traditional set of virtual servers in a cluster, a storage array for the business data, the networking equipment, and an IT department, which was serving this 4 to 5 office, at the time they implemented 4 to 5 offices. They had an IT department who was less able to serve the end users, was less able to serve and support the business applications, the line of business tools, in this case, case management and billing tools that where the focus needed to be. That IT department spent more time keeping the equipment up to date and managing their existing Citrix technology. So the reason they are up here in the quadrant of leading edge technology is their existing equipment, their existing technology was already a virtual desktop platform. They already published apps and had a virtual desktop experience for the users, but it was on premises. They knew they needed to go, they wanted to find a partner that was a managed service provider. They didn't want to invest in a large capital expenditure to replace the equipment. So this is a traditional cloud story. And this is a story that started a couple of years back and is a great referenceable customer. We'll get to that in a moment. But that said, implementation was done. We take the customer through this journey, migrating not only their virtual desktop infrastructure, but the business systems themselves. And they remain a leading edge technology company. And now they can easily go into opening additional offices, no constraints on, less constraint on their headquarters, which had, was a point of a point of risk because it didn't have the data, the generators and the redundancies that a data center does, right? So they're a perfect candidate for virtual desktop as a service. Next scenario is a construction contractor, 15 users, so much smaller environment here, pretty fixed standard type technologies they need. They have some bidding software that they use. They do some AutoCAD type work and otherwise, regular business apps and communications. They are on premises, and in fact, in this case, they still are today with their business servers. But the concern they had, and this is a story around the COVID shelter scenario, the concern around security was that the principal of the company, he was not interested in sending everyone home and having VPNs open up to personal devices. For the remote users. The concern there, which rightfully so, was based on the fact that the business never had control of, and nor should they have had to worry about protecting their employees' home personal computer devices. So the quick solution here, which we're able to get online for them in just a matter of a couple of days, was a virtual desktop platform. That virtual desktop runs on our data center, and with a secure VPN tunnel back to their office. And now they have a secure virtual desktop running that is performance-wise and speed-wise, it's considerably better than what they were trying to use, which is let's say a team viewer or a remote PC or a LogMeIn type platform, which when the shelter hit initially, unfortunately, those systems were inundated with millions of people trying to use them for the first time. Those systems are still struggling with capacity and resources. So the desktop as a service platform and option here is more robust and dedicated performance, dedicated connectivity speed. The last scenario we'll talk about here is a hospital. This example being a hospital in the Chicago area, a small, a regional hospital, standalone, not part of a larger network. In this case, they've got a larger number of users, but what they had is a subset of them who, they had been the back office business users. They had never worked from home before. They didn't have all the tools that maybe some of the other medical professionals had at the hospital, who were used to being able to get in and being more flexible with accessing patient charts, data, and such. So these business office users suddenly needed to be remote. And while the hospital did have infrastructure on premises, did have once again a more sophisticated use of existing technology, having Citrix in their environment already, they needed a quick, flexible, scalable desktop as a service solution to help enable these remote users. So once again, another scenario where we were able to very rapidly deploy and onboard services. And so at this time, I'm going to move slide here and talk about a little bit in more detail case study here. I'm going to turn it back over to Matt, and thank you everyone for your time so far.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. And just to add a little bit more, this Coca Pincus Dolan is actually the case study that Mike was referencing, and the reason we kind of highlighted here is because the company itself actually did a press release not that long ago, maybe a week or so ago, really telling their story around how moving to cloud technologies has allowed them to transition to a work from home model better than they ever thought they'd be able to. This was a journey that they started about 2 years ago, and so for their employees, their attorneys, they would come into the office, basically sit at their computer, log in. To be honest with you, I don't necessarily know that most of the employees knew that they were using a virtual desktop. It was just how they started up their computer, they went in, they logged in, and they were off and running. And so when they had to switch to a work from home, obviously everyone had to go home, and these people were now able to just kind of pick up their own personal laptops or desktops they had at home, hit a browser, log in, and for all intents and purposes, they were working as if they were sitting at their desktop. And so, talking to the leadership of this organization, they basically said that they felt like some of the investments they made 2 years ago, they were preparing for a day like this, which obviously no one saw that coming. But I would just encourage you guys, if you guys are interested in this particular case study, and again to hear it from the perspective of the company, just go ahead and Google Coca Pincus Dolan, and it's one of the first, at least a couple days ago, it was one of the first entries in terms of that case study. Okay. I know we're getting short on time. Mike, do you want to jump to the next one?
Yes, I do. Sorry, I'm advancing the slide here. Should be coming up. There we go.
Back up one more.
Yep. Doing so.
We're out of control.
Sorry about that.
So what we find a lot is that as an organization is looking at kind of cloud, right, and as they're looking at things like desktop as a service, desktop as a service and a virtual desktop. And I think in one of the examples Mike provided, it's kind of that foothold to the cloud, right? It tends to be people's kind of initial kind of, if they haven't made that journey yet, if they really haven't moved their organization into the cloud, it tends to be a nice kind of foothold. And once folks get a little bit of experience with desktop as a service, not necessarily the capabilities, there's a lot of other kind of cloud-based technologies and kind of as a service models And just to share, for us, we see companies that really get benefit in terms of beginning to bundle those things. So, maybe they start with desktop as a service, infrastructure as a service is kind of a natural, kind of coupling with that. Then you even have things like security as a service and firewall as a service and all these other kind of as a service models that really begin to kind of stack up upon each other. And for us, we've kind of coined a term, kind of office in a box. An organization can now begin to leverage all of these technologies. They get to use all the technologies, they get the benefits of the technology, but they don't have to worry about the infrastructure. They don't have to worry about the ongoing investment. They don't even have to worry about necessarily having folks that are completely up to speed on these technologies. They're able to use the technology, again, without having to kind of invest in, keeping up with the technology per se. So we see a lot of companies that use desktop as a service as kind of a foothold into this kind of philosophical approach to business technology. Where to start? Back up one more quick, Mike, and then I'll jump to that one.
Thanks.
In terms of where to start, a couple kind of just, from our experience, I'll definitely start with the applications. Obviously this is a desktop experience, but at the end of the day, folks are interacting with applications. And, for many reasons, there are some applications that work well within this setup. There are some that you need to make some modifications or make some adjustments. So we definitely recommend that folks kind of focus with the applications first. Definitely talk to your users to get a sense of their experience. And we often recommend a kind of a proof of concept to kind of get the sense of the experience and then kind of measure and adjust that experience as we go forward. Okay, now we can move on. I know we're down to minutes.
Yes.
Other thing in terms of starting, when the COVID situation hit, we found a lot of organizations coming to us and saying, hey, we weren't ready for this. How quickly can we get this up and running? And so, we basically put together a little task force and we were able to deploy these technologies pretty darn quickly. And on top of that, just to make this even easier, we started a promotion in terms of the first 90 days of the service was for free, just to remove that barrier so we could focus on getting the organizations that came to us kind of up and running and moving. And then again, we could, kind of figure things out from there. So this is a promotion that we're extending out to the end of this month, just because we've had a lot of interest in it. And so again, we just wanted to kind of make folks aware to see if that's beneficial to anyone on the call. Obviously, we'd love to talk to you more about that. And then last but not least, we included just a handful of questions here. If you're still kind of uncertain whether, desktop as a service, as a technology is right, pretty much, I think if you answered yes to any of those questions, there's a strong possibility that, it's worthwhile to kind of take a look at the technology in a little bit more depth. Okay.
Hey, Matt, thanks a lot. We're right at the 10:30
Yep.
mark here. I'm going to turn it back over to Joe just to help close us out.
Thank you, guys. We greatly appreciate your time and being able to share. Thank you, everyone that's a part of this call today. As I mentioned at the beginning, I'll be sending out an email over to you, sharing my contact information. If you have any questions, please reach out directly to me. I'm happy to assist. The ultimate goal here was to share value to our clients, our relationships, and our people. And so we want to make sure that that happens. So I hope you all have a great day and everyone stay safe.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everybody.